Hi guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm reviewing the Edifier S2000MKIII, which you can see just behind. I know, X can give it to you. Now, when Edifier reached out, I was actually really excited because I'd reviewed the S3000 Pro and I was absolutely blown away by those active bookshelf speakers. Now, the S2000 Pro Mark III are essentially a smaller variant of the S3000 Pro, and they're also active bookshelf speakers. Now, these speakers are cheaper than the S3K. They're basically £430 in the UK and around $400, around £150 to £200 cheaper or dollars cheaper, depending on your region. Now, if you're interested in buying the S2000 Pro MK3, the link in the description below, the locally link will take you to your localized Amazon store. Now, before jumping into this review, if you do have Instagram, I'd very much appreciate a follow. It's at TotallyDubbed. It'll be on your screen right now, and also, yes, in that fabled description box. So now let's get on to the review. First off, a quick note about what you get in the package. You've got this pretty sleek remote control, which essentially allows you to mute your music, power on or off the speakers, switch between 4 different EQs, so that is monitor, dynamic, classic, and vocal, and I'll showcase this in my sound demo later down in the review. You've also got volume up and down and next and previous. Now, in terms of next and previous, you can skip through your music if you are running via Bluetooth. So yes, these do support Bluetooth. It's Bluetooth 5.0 with aptX HD included, which is absolutely fantastic. So you can connect up to your phone, and I had no issues there connecting up via my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. In terms of other connectivity, you've got 2 RCA inputs, you've got optical and digital coaxial. Unfortunately, very much like the S3000 Pro, there is no subwoofer output. Now, there might be workarounds for you doing via the RCA inputs and treating that as like kind of an output, but ultimately there is no dedicated subwoofer output, and that's quite a shame, to be honest with you. I would have liked Edifier to actually address that issue and integrate that port for people who have active subwoofers. Nevertheless, that is not included. What you do get, however, is 3 physical dials at the back, 1 to adjust the bass, 1 to adjust the treble, and 1 to adjust the overall volume. And yes, when you do adjust the overall volume, it does show on your digital display at the front. Now, in terms of the digital display at the front, there's a little OLED display, and when you're flicking through different settings, you will be able to see that. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, you can't disable the OLED. So in other words, when you are playing through the settings and you're finished, there's no way of actually disabling that screen. A little bit of an oversight, because of the S3000 Pro is kind of the other way around. You didn't have an indication, whereas here you have an indication, but I can imagine some people in dark rooms or listening to their speakers wouldn't want that little OLED screen. Nevertheless, it isn't too distracting, so it's just something I just thought to point out. Now, elsewhere, you will get a speaker cable, a really, really thick speaker cable, should I say. It's pretty long, so that won't be an issue if you have a TV setup. For me, who has a bookshelf setup in terms of my desk, it is a pretty thick cable, and it does take quite a bit of room. Now, the cable is to connect a right speaker to the left one. The left one doesn't have any power, so you only need 1 power cable, which goes to the right speaker, and then you've got your setup complete. Now, before jumping into the sound quality, I will also like to mention the build quality of the speakers. I think, personally, they look absolutely sensational. They've got a wooden enclosure and a sense of like a aluminium metallic kind of finish at the front, and they've got little legs as well, which means that they're a little bit raised off your ground, and therefore is a bit better in terms of resonance and in terms of overall sound frequency. And they've also got removable fabric mesh style grills. So if you don't want them, you don't have to have them. But if you do have them, then you'll see that they look like this in the background. The overall look and design to me is quite important, because people will want speakers that they actually like looking, other than obviously listening to. And here I think Edifier have done an excellent job in integrating a speaker that actually looks really nice. But now, what about the sound quality? Well, to just give you an idea about the setup, I've got them running via optical to my PC's motherboard. It's running at 192 24-bit. You can adjust this through the Windows setting, so just worth bearing that in mind, but that's what they support, at least in optical mode. As I mentioned before, you've got coaxial RCA as well if you want to run a separate DAC or an amplifier, and also you have got Bluetooth if you do want that, but bear in mind Bluetooth probably won't be as good as the wired connection, despite its really advanced codec. Now, in terms of sound, what I'm going to do is give you a demo. The demo is from an artist called Priya. She's my friend, and her song is called Falling. You can listen to her song down in the description below, so do check that out for your own reference. And what I've done is positioned the microphone and camera in a way that it picks up to the best of its ability. And then I also do cycle through the modes, so do check out for a little annotation at the bottom, which shows the modes.
Sing, you know, I'm crawling, crawling. I am crawling my way back to falling from so high, falling from so high, so high. The thing is, my imagination is constantly racing 1,000 miles ahead. I'm living in my own mind, but it's floating. I'm always hoping. When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always sink, and
now with that sound demo out the way, I will want to quickly touch upon the different modes. Now the monitor mode sounds kind of the flattest out of the four. Vocal and classical didn't really add that much of a difference, whilst dynamic really did bring out the lows and the highs, kind of like not trying to say like a V-shaped sound, but it kind of boosted up those frequencies. In my opinion, dynamic for my music is the best. Of course, your mileage may vary, you might prefer a different mode, but it's just thought to just run you through those 4 different modes really quickly, and hopefully my camera / microphone actually picked that up. I'm not really sure. But now let's get into the actual sound frequencies, and here is where I was really impressed and pleasantly surprised. With the S2000 Pro, I was expecting kind of like a dumbed down version of the S3000 Pro. And in a nutshell, that's exactly what it is. It's not as wide sounding, it's not as low, doesn't extend as low in the low ends tones, but on the whole, it's great in terms of its overall sound signature and the way that it actually portrays itself in terms of imaging and tonality. So let's break it down. Let's first off talk about the sub-bass frequency. Well, here the speakers cut at around a 45 Hz region. So in other words, you're not going to get that low end rumble. Don't get me wrong, it's there, it's present, you can hear it, and you can tailor it with the bass adjustment at the back. FYI, for me, I used it at -2 bass setting and a 0 setting for treble. Now here I felt that the sub bass isn't as good as the S3000 Pro, and even if you look at the specs, the S3000 Pro actually extends a little further down. I think it's 38 Hz from memory. So in other words, it is to be expected, but you shouldn't be disappointed. Specifically when it comes to the mid bass is really tight and pronounced. A little bit overpowering in my opinion, specifically in my type of setup, which is kind of like a closed-ish setup. Therefore I reduced the bass just a little bit. But here the bass is really precise, and I really like the controlled slam that Edifier has been able to reproduce with these speakers. They again remind me of the S3000 Pro in their mid-range, their mid-bass reproduction, and on the whole, I think they've just done a great job. As for the mids, they are slightly recessed, they are slightly warmer, V-shaped sounding, they sound kind of cozy, but at the same time, they're very much accurate. You can adjust this via the treble adjustment, but just worth bearing in mind that if you do adjust the treble adjustment, the physical dial that is at the back of the speaker, then you'll be adjusting the highs, which is something you might not want. So potentially a software EQ might be better for you in this respect for the mid-range. But what I will say is that the mid-range is very pleasant to the ears. When I was listening to Priya's track, for example, her vocals came out really well and didn't sound too drowned out or subdued. At its price range, it's absolutely incredible. If you compare it to some other active bookshelf speakers or even passive speakers, I think these speakers are excellent sounding for their mid-range. As for the highs, they extend really well. I was actually surprised as to how well they extended. Those little tweeters at the top really do an excellent job. Again, if you do adjust the treble, it will become a little bit harsh and potentially a little bit sibilant, but at the default setting to my ears, which rolls off at around 16 kilohertz or 17 kilohertz, sorry, then I found that the speakers were actually really impressive in their highs. Now, as for the Soundstage, which is something that I'm usually really critical on with bookshelf speakers, specifically ones which are, at around this price tag or even cheaper, these were absolutely incredible. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not as wide or as deep sounding, so to speak, as the S3000 Pro, which are truly mind-blowing in terms of their soundstage reproduction, but they are physically bigger. With that physical size kind of reducing, even the driver size actually reducing as well, it's no surprise to hear that these sound stages are a little bit more close sounding. Now, don't get me wrong, here I am comparing these speakers to their older and more expensive siblings, which are also bigger. In comparison to other bookshelf speakers at its price range, I think you'll actually struggle to find such great instrument separation, good width and depth in terms of the overall soundstage, and furthermore, the overall imaging that these speakers do produce is spot on. What I'm trying to say over here is the soundstage is actually incredible for its price and for its size. I think Edifier have done a great job, yet again, kind of like the S3000 Pro. So what is my overall take of the sound quality? Well, if it wasn't obvious already, I think these are fabulous sounding. I really couldn't find a fault in them. Yes, they could extend a little bit lower in the sub-bass tones, and a dedicated subwoofer output would have really aided that, because then it would kind of negate that issue for Edifier, saying that if people want that sub-bass tones, then they can add a subwoofer. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but despite that, for a set of bookshelf speakers that actually do sound incredible throughout the frequency range, then the Edifier S2000 Pro, S2000MKIII, I'm losing track of the names, they're an excellent set of bookshelf speakers. And that's pretty much my verdict. If you're looking for a set of bookshelf speakers, and I've got around $400, around £400 to spend, or indeed like 400 euros-ish, then I would very much suggest these speakers. I've reviewed in excess of 300 audio-related devices on this channel alone, and heard in excess of 500 different audio-related devices. I say that for over a year now, so it's probably way more than that. But the point is, I am genuinely absolutely impressed, and I would love to own these type of speakers if I was looking to buy a set of speakers at this price range. I think Edifier have done a great job. And I should say that this video isn't sponsored or paid for or endorsed in any way. These speakers go straight back to Edifier after this review. It's just my honest opinion and my experience while listening to these speakers. I think you'll agree if you hear them yourselves. If you don't, however, or if you do, let me know in the comments below. I'm very much intrigued to hear your thoughts. Subscribe if you want to see more honest content like this. Like, as it always helps. And of course, favorite and share to help the channel grow. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye-bye.